One of my favorite websites. I'm going to actually share my screen. Hopefully it doesn't feel like a work share. Bigpulpit.com. Shout out to the folks over at Big Pulpit. We're not sponsored by anyone, but Big Pulpit is actually local, so I wanted to support the local folks. And Big Pulpit's
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a Catholic news aggregate. The gentleman who runs this actually goes to a parish that you and I go to as well. So
Really?
Yeah. So shout out to bigpulpit.com. All right, so the first one I wanted to talk to you about was this one. So this came out. Uncle Ted, ex-Cardinal Theodore McCarrick. This is how to escape the influence of bad bishops.
It's a good one.
Yeah, this is a really good one. So option 1, we could move out of the archdiocese.
Mm-hmm.
Option 2, we can join a Latin Mass fraternity or institute. So ICK, Institute of Christ the King, or the Priestly Fraternity of St. Peter, which is interesting. I think we need to talk about like why this, what does this mean? Like, why is this an option? Option 3, join an ordinariate parish, which is referring to the personal ordinariate of the chair of St. Peter, of the English patrimony.
Yes.
Which is a great option. Option 4, join an Eastern Catholic parish. So let's just kind of burn down these and look and kind of get our feel of what this actually means. I mean, is there a diocese that you know of that has a great bishop? Tyler, Texas. Yeah, that's Bishop Strickland. Yep,
Bishop Strickland, I hear, is great bishop, does great things.
He's active on social media, so he's trying to meet people where they're at. I know he's really active, trying to provide inspiration as a shepherd.
Yep. And then Portland, the Bishop of Portland, I think is really good too. Bishop Sample.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's really good. Who else?
Cordileone,
yeah. I think he's good. That might be it. I'm sure there are a couple more.
No, there's more. We just was Olmsted, who wrote he wrote the Into the Breach exhortation to men.
Yes, where's he? He's
I feel like he's
Nebraska.
I mean Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska has always been a strong diocese.
Yes.
So you can move to San Francisco. You can move to Tyler, Texas.
Portland,
Oregon. Something about Portland makes me uneasy.
Yeah, just a little bit.
I don't know. I don't know what's worse. And then Bishop Olmsted. I don't know. We can look it up. But I don't know where he is, but wherever he is. But then, like, there used to be other good bishops as well. Like, why aren't we talking about Dolan? Wasn't he one of the big pro-life people? Pro-life bishops?
I mean, there was a time where he was definitely one of the good guys. I think I don't know. He seems to have gone soft. Potentially, I don't know. In his attempt to court the high society of New York, he seems to have gone soft. He I don't know. You don't hear much from him anymore. He's been very quiet recently.
I'm going to also add today, Galveston, Houston. There is movement. There may not be vocal news, but there's a lot of chess pieces being moved very quietly. Maybe setups for other things, good things to come.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely think there are a lot of good signs here, and all things considered, I think we have a good cardinal, we have a good bishop. You know, does he do as much as I wish he would? Does he push as much? Does he, you know, rock the boat as much as I wish he would? No, but there is an argument to be made, and I was talking with family about this actually. There's an argument to be made that you need both. You need people that rock the boat publicly and are willing to stand up. And then you need some people that are kind of more shrewd and are kind of trying to change the church from within, right? From obviously being a cardinal or being a bishop in the church, you have some amount of influence. And so given the current state of the church and the current state of, you know, the current papacy and the emphasis that the papacy kind of gives, you kind of have to stay in the game by playing the game. So you're not able to completely speak your mind freely, but you're still trying to push things generally in the right direction. And I think you need both kinds of bishops. You need both the Bishop Schneider of the world, and then you need maybe the Cardinal Donardo, who is, I think, doing some good things, but then at the same time not being as public as maybe I would like. And I'm hoping, maybe this is just me making stuff up, but I'm hoping that it's because he is trying to use his influence in a more shrewd way, in a more quiet way, but nonetheless trying to push things in the right direction. I imagine that like him, there are other cardinals, there are other people within the church that are trying to make things better, trying to push things in the right direction, but can't really come out and say it. I know several priests who work in Rome that would fit this category. Really good priests, Orthodox priests, who if they came out and completely spoke their mind, they would be gone. They would be reassigned, and then they would be in no position to influence the church. So that's the two sides of the coin, and I'm hopeful that, you know, just like there was a silent Trump vote, maybe not enough of it, there's a silent, you know, a silent majority in the church that wants to do the right thing and wants it to go in the right direction, but has to play the game given the current situation in the church.
Yeah, and you know, I'm going to come from a different angle there. If I think we have a problem where we've taken, say, like the Francis option, um, preach the gospel when preach the gospel at all times when necessary. Use words. I think this is the time to use words. Like we consume, if we look at just the amount of data that we consume on a daily basis, we're consuming, I don't know, terabytes of information every year. All the videos that we're watching, all the content that we're consuming. My point is that I think we need to have bishops that like Bishop Strickland, who's able just to meet people where they're at. People aren't going to get off of social media. The ones
Yeah.
that need, you know, so I think what we need to have is bishops having a presence there. Like they're shepherds, right? Like they interact with the sheep. They need to have some sort of connection and a feedback loop of showing our prayers. Like I think we're at a point where to fail to do that, we would just be conceding so much ground year after year, month after month, day after day.
But are you saying that mainly?
I think we need to protest. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm wondering if you were, for example, would you want a Cardinal Donardo or let's say a Cardinal Sarah to come out and be more combative? Because, for example, Cardinal Sarah right now, his position is impossible. He's the head of the CDF and basically can't say anything because if he does, he's gone.
Well,
And I think he toes the line because he knows that it's best for him to sit in that chair than to let someone else come and sit in it. Would you rather him be more combative, or do you think it's valuable that he's just keeping the chair occupied?
well, I guess you could ask the question: what's the effect of him sitting on the chair?
It
Is there?
keeps a crazier person from occupying the chair.
And so my argument that with that is that, well, we're just trying to plug the dam, right?
You're biding time in hopes that when the time comes, you can get a coalition together and elect a better pope.
But if we're not,
That would be the conspiracy
yeah,
theory.
yeah, and so that's my point though, is that like we're not that connected. If the good priests who are looking at the situation today, where there's mass confusion, there's
Mhm.
lots of confusion, as well as liturgical confusion, as well as now theological, moral, ecological confusion. we have we don't have a way to stay connected anymore. So it's all this like, oh, it's because it's my family, I know this priest that is good, and or like it's these tiny circles, right? So we stop being Catholic. And I'm there needs to be someone courageous enough, willing to take the hits. There also needs to be some cunning strategic
Yeah.
moves that has to be made. But I think there, at the helm, there has to be someone leading everything. Otherwise, we're uncoordinated,
But overall, you agree
disconnected.
you need both. You
I
need
think
to have outspoken people and then people that are maybe a little more secret agent, covert ops kind of people.
I mean, how much do you think would get done? I mean, you know, if uh, if Cardinal DiNardo were to go on a rosary campaign and Eucharistic campaign, that has nothing to do with COVID, that has nothing to do with the liturgy per se, right? Like calling out specific things, it has
Mhm.
nothing to do with, he just can't pull people together. So like he can't pull like a mass together. But if you were to go on a campaign, even just on video, calling out Fatima and saying, "Hey, we need to renew our faith through the rosary."
Yep.
I just don't know where to find any messages like that other than those few bishops that we've actually mentioned. And this is not, I mean, is the rosary controversial? I don't think so. Yeah, are these devotions controversial? I don't think so. But I do feel like that's the kind of messaging that I would want to hear. So when we
Yeah,
talk
well,
about
I
like
think
what,
that's very doable. I don't. Yeah, I don't think that
and
would be.
it's doable and it's just not done. And I think that's
Yeah,
that's the
that's true.
that's where I'm coming from. And like there's little things here and there, and then I'll get messages from friends saying, "Well, Jeff, go do that thing. Like go talk to these people. That'll give you your fix, what you're talking about." But I take that as lukewarmness. And I'm just being honest. Like I that's my hot take. I think that
Yeah, but I
bishops
guess
need to
I'm trying
be.
to tease out where you draw the line because I've been struggling with this myself, which is just sometimes I hear well-known Catholics, Catholic celebrities, for lack of a better word,
We need a rosary train.
because I mean, to me, like saying we should pray, have public processions or do what Bishop Sample did, which exercise the city, things like that. Um, I think are not as controversial as, for example, publicly criticizing the fact that the Pope tends to be ambiguous in his statements. Like you're not going to hear cardinals talk about that, or you're not going to talk about a cardinal criticizing the lack of information in the McCarrick report. Like they're just not going to get into that. And what I want to know from you is, do you think they should be talking about these things, or do you think it's enough for them to just, let's say, lead more public devotional lives, or, where do you draw the line? How combative would you want your bishop to be?
I want my bishop to strike with prayer.
Okay.
So the way that looks like is we're going to do a procession for the healing of the people who are abused by McCarrick, and also to an end to any kind of corruption.
Yeah.
that's not a protest. That's a plea to God
Yeah,
to heal his church. So
agreed.
so something like that, where the intention for the prayer is calling out the evil, against the evil, and as well as calling down, the angels and Our Lady to come down and save us,
Yes.
through Our Lady to Jesus. So that's the kind of thing I would love to see. And there have been, not saying that there's not been anything like that. There was a 40-hour rosary at a parish nearby, the 40 hours, which comes directly from the Protestant Reformation. It was a response to the Protestant Reformation to
That's cool.
reinstill the faith in the Blessed Sacrament and the real presence. Yeah, but I would like to see bishops really push the things that I see lay people pushing
Yeah.
in devotion, in prayer.
But Jeff Vatican II says
Ugh. Check out our previous episodes on that.
it's the laity.
Yeah, it's all the laity. The deacons will save us.
It is
So
not just the laity. We do have some role, but
we
definitely not
do,
the only
and
role.
we have an important role. I think that yes, we do
But it would
have
be
a key
powerful. You're
role.
right. I mean, it would be powerful to see the cardinal lead processions, or, I mean, that it was really powerful to hear about Cordileone and Bishop Semple leading an exorcism in a place where legitimate evil took place. That's pretty cool, to have.
And to be consistent with it, right? Like to see, um, like for example, uh, Cordileone has a website called freethemass.com or .org.
Right, right.
Um,
Where he's asking for petitions
right, exactly. So
or signatures, I should say.
check that out, because obviously they feel, and I feel, that they are being prohibited from their constitutional as well as God-given right to have a reasonable, accommodated mass during a pandemic. That it's
Yeah,
going beyond just measures for a pandemic to protect people. It's actually
yeah,
now ventured into religious persecution.
yeah. In California, it's a tough deal
Yeah, yeah,
with that
yeah.
regulation.
So I don't know. I may be on an island when it comes to wanting to see our bishops really lead us and show us, like, all right, so what do we do in this? And be the servant leader that they are, we expect them to be, and as well as, we pray for them. I'm not saying like this is the kind of person I deserve. No, it's actually begging and asking for help. That's the
Sure.
way I'm messaging this out, to see them be, again, the servant leader by being the one in the front,
Yeah.
showing us how to
Lead
do
from the
this.
front, the general.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of us feeling like, we're kind of leading ourselves.
Yeah. No, I
Um,
think that's a very fair, legitimate, and even, I would say, realistic expectation. I don't think that sounds unreasonable.
so get it done. Let's get this done. Let's do this. Our people are suffering. We need
Okay.
this. We want to see leadership by example. You know,
Yeah, I agree.
we got 4 kids. It's tough for us. Other people
Yeah.
got more kids. Other people are suffering in different ways. Just do a simple devotion. Show us the way. Be there.
Man, I like it.
So here's the other article. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Awesome.
Actually, we didn't get to cover the other stuff, but we'll skip through.
I mean, if you want, we can just do that one article. I'd be
Yeah,
interested to
yeah. Actually,
finish the thought on that.
So the option 2. So option 2 is join a Latin Mass fraternity or institute. So FSSP or ICK. I actually don't think there's any ICK anywhere near where we are,
No, not near us.
but
However,
FSSP.
we should petition that they come out here.
I agree. And maybe even like do they have a what do they have? Like a monastery? Maybe that they have or put a seminary here. Do they have? I don't know much about
They,
ICK.
I mean, I don't know a whole lot either, but I have my, I call him my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law's husband, which I was corrected by someone that is technically not my brother-in-law, but I still call him my brother-in-law. He has more experience. He lives in Gibraltar in Europe. Most of his experience is with the Institute in Europe. The priests are still trained in Europe, in Italy, and they send them out. They have a pretty good presence in the northern part of the United States. They haven't quite made all the way down to the south, but I was asking him about it, and he said, just contact one of their churches and ask them to send a priest to your area. And if you, I mean, you'd have to petition also the cardinal, but if they both agree, I think they'd be happy to send someone down.
So let's talk about like why this is an option when you don't have a good shepherd, or if you have a shepherd that's deliberately leading you astray. God forbid that you live in one of those places in those
Yeah,
archdioceses. So why would FSSP and ICK be a place of refuge, so to speak?
because they're more stable. There isn't as much room in just their way of life, their rubrics, their.
So the bishop can't, like, does the bishop have authority over them? Like, can they do
I
like
mean, he does. He does
like
have authority over them, but
ordinary form masses or?
well, they have some rights. They have rights that cannot be overstepped, but
Mhm.
they can always have to leave by a bishop. But I think the main thing that they provide is the extraordinary form, which inherently is a more stable form of the Mass. The problem, or one of the problems with the Novus Ordo, is that while it can be celebrated very reverently and traditionally, it is completely at the whim of the priest celebrating. And so how many times have you heard stories of a parish gets a new great priest, changes everything for the better, everyone's happy, and then he has to leave for whatever reason, he gets moved, in comes in a new priest, completely reverses everything that was done before, and now you're back in limbo. I mean, we both have had experiences of priests that were not great for families or were not great in certain aspects of the faith, and you kept thinking, well, maybe the next pastor will be better. And maybe he is, but how long is he going to be there? I mean, the problem with some of these, diocesan parishes is there can be such a fluctuation, such a huge pendulum swing from one side to the other, that as someone in a family trying to plan how you're going to raise your kids, it's difficult to think that today might be fine, but tomorrow might be crazy. And so one of the great, blessings of fraternity parish or an Institute Christ the King parish is the Mass creates a really stable environment, because the Mass cannot be changed that much. I mean, there are some options in the extraordinary form, but on the whole is Mass of the ages. It's been the same for hundreds of years. It's going to be the same tomorrow. You're not going to have a priest that comes in and all of a sudden has banners everywhere and is playing the Beatles as the music, So that in itself creates a very stable environment in which you can raise a family, because you can reasonably expect the Mass is going to continue to be beautiful and be the same. And I think that alongside of that, the catechesis that the priests of the Institute and the fraternity advocate for are in line with that same tradition of the church. So you're not going to get, kind of wild swings in orthodoxy. I think overall you're going to find that these parishes are orthodox, and specifically because the rock that is the extraordinary form liturgy. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would say that, yeah, it's because that they have been given special permission to celebrate the extraordinary form. Now we call this extraordinary form, but the traditional Latin Mass or the 1962 Missal. And in particular, ICK has like they actually have some additional permissions, right? Like I think they have slightly different variations of them of maybe some of the propers or the way they actually do the liturgy of the 1962. Like they actually kind of
I'm
have.
not sure, honestly. To be honest, I don't know.
I remember,
Could
I don't
be.
know,
Could be.
mutual friend of ours mentioned that, but I'm actually not familiar with ICK too much. But
Yeah.
the gist of it is that because because of their charism of preserving the traditional Latin Mass, and in particular the FSSP of bringing in SSPX, or the Society of St. Pius X, who, when the 1962 missal was suppressed, they continued with Archbishop Lefebvre to continue celebrating that Mass, that missal. And then FSSP was brought in to kind of bring them back into the church, to allow them to have communion with church, because
Yeah.
they were actually schismatic. And then we've talked about Summorum Pontificum as well, and how that also now allows not just, as that's separate from these two orders. That actually allows any archdiocese, anyone in the Latin Rite, to celebrate the traditional Latin Mass, provided there's people that ask for it. The pastoral police are coming down now and doing surveys to see if, hey, was this pastorally driven, or did your priest actually try to guide you? Because that's not right.
Yeah.
Was he trying to shepherd? That's no.
That's a no-no.
So,
So now let's talk about the downsides of number 2. For example, why don't you attend a fraternity parish?
well,
Or why don't I attend a fraternity parish?
Well, I would say availability. I think the priests are pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
But here's a hot take, and every person, I think almost everyone who focuses on Gregorian chant would agree, who's paid attention to the rubrics, that this is going to come out hot, man. The people
Coming in hot.
the way we do the traditional Latin Mass at these parishes are very low mass centric, and that's not at all what the rubrics call for people's postures. And why is this important? Well, it's because at some of these parishes you'll run into, on occasion, and it's not always, because I love FSSP and what they do and what they provide. It's like an order of magnitude better than what most parishes provide. So the biggest reason I don't attend is because of the distance to commute.
Okay.
The second reason is the low mass culture, which we can describe. But I think you agree on that as well. The low mass culture, the rubrics, where the some people really like it. Well, it's very monastic, I would say, or trying to be monastic, minus the presence of monks, as well as well, I mean, as well as even the liturgical music, which I'm constantly discovering. I'm really discovering what the church has really asked for in active participation in some of her documents, which I'm not going to rattle them off. Yeah. So, all right. So what are the downsides for you? Why don't you attend?
Low mass culture would be number 1 for sure. In fact, that's probably the only one. Well, low mass culture, and the fact that the current parish is just not that fully developed yet. And so I have young children that need to be catechized. I mean, I am primary catechist of my children. However, it is nice to have a support network and group, and they're getting going, but it's still kind of a small parish. And so there are better alternatives. And the commute, it's pretty far away for us. So those things play in. But I would say the number 1, low mass culture. So the reality is, and this is a hot take,
Hit it.
there tends to be some insufferable people that attend the Latin Mass. Not all of them. And I would even give them an excuse and say they have reasons to be insufferable. They have suffered for decades trying to fight for the right to celebrate. Fight for the right, to celebrate the extraordinary form. And they've had to claw their way in, and they've had to fight every step of the way. And so they end up becoming hardened and jaded, and they end up becoming, battle ready. They think everything is a battle. If they see you and you're wearing a bright colored shirt, they think that somehow you're trying to infiltrate their church and change it back. And next thing you know, there won't be any altar rails anymore, and we'll be clapping and singing. So like they've been so jaded for so long that they don't trust. They have a distrust of people that are not part of their inner circle. So that's kind of the rationale that I give them. So there's some legitimacy why they are the way they are. Doesn't change the fact, however, they're not pleasant to be around. And when you're trying to go Sunday Mass and have an atmosphere of community and have an atmosphere of, of just connection with like-minded Catholics, it is sometimes difficult to get into those communities because they are so closely knit. They're battle buddies, and you weren't part of the battle, and sometimes they see you as an outsider, and that can be off-putting. And again, this isn't everyone, but I would also say it's not a small percentage. And I know that this is something that, they're working on and they're recognizing, and it's something that even good old Father Ripperger talks about, that this is a reality that traditional Catholics are trying to deal with. And so I would say, again, as a father of young children, trying to raise them up, I don't want them growing up thinking that they can't trust anyone and that we're in a perpetual, just like battle where we're trying to claw our way to, through everything. I mean, we are in a battle, but it's not quite as extreme as some people in those communities think.
And the reason you don't attend ICK better be a good one.
It's hundreds of miles away.
All right, that's fair. That's fair.
But I've heard so many good things about ICK. Here's one good thing I've heard. And again, I'm hearing this secondhand, so I have not experienced this myself. So if the FSSP, like you were saying, has a special charism of bringing in former SSPXers into the bosom of the church, which is a very good thing, providing them with communities that they can feel like they're fully participating in the church and not having to compromise, with some of the things that you have to deal with in diocesan parishes. So that's a really great calling. But again, that means you're going to maybe have people that are a little more jaded, right? So ICK, from what I hear, from what I understand, at least in Europe, maybe it's different here, doesn't carry that baggage. They did not come out of SSPX as FF. There's so many letters. FSSP came out of SSPX. ICK did not. It was created separately in the 90s, and therefore they don't carry that same, let's call it, baggage. And from what I understand, they kind of just celebrate the Mass more freely. They kind of just say, like, this is just the Mass. It's not a big deal. Like, we're not trying to battle. We're not trying to win a war. It's the Mass. And we're celebrating it. And we're offering it to you. And so I would love for them to make their way down to Texas. If nothing else, just have another community that you could be a part of, and for people to, maybe the pews at our local FSSP parish won't be quite as packed if we get another one.
Well, so ICK stands for Institute of Christ the King. Oh wait, here we go. Institute of Christ the King, the Sovereign Priest.
Sovereign Priest, yep.
Yeah, and they actually have a color. It's almost like they're a religious order. So they have they're the blue. They're the boys in blue and the sisters. So we got to back the blue.
Back the blue, baby.
Yeah, we back the blue for ICK. Very awesome. Dos Vaticanos approved.
Yeah, no, I've heard a lot of good things. I would love to get them down here to Houston. Again, I love FSSP. I have nothing against FSSP. They're wonderful. However, it's always nice the more the merrier, so to speak.
So this is option 2 for how to escape the influence of bad bishops. So, number 3, which you and I are very familiar with, and obtain many, many fruits, a kind of paradise, I would say.
Yeah,
Join an ordinariate parish or the cathedral herself.
indeed. Yes. I mean, it's what what can we say, Jeff? I mean, it's great. It's been like we sometimes call it. It's like a small cruise liner
Oh
sailing
yeah, I connected to the bark, right?
connected to the bark of Peter.
This is a really nice yacht, you guys. You did a great
Yeah,
job. You know,
it's very nice. Beautiful liturgy. I mean, really, the liturgy as the Second Vatican Council called for, like what the council called for, that's very similar to what I would see. I would say that the ordinary liturgy is very similar to what the Second Vatican Council called for. It's beautiful, no compromises, in English. Not to mention that in our parish here in Houston, it's an amazing parish. It's like I'm always surprised because it seems like they do everything well. There isn't something that falls through the cracks. They do
yeah,
everything well, and it's amazing.
they do the parish life, the liturgical life. They keep it small intentionally. There's an intimacy built into how they see themselves growing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
it is the English patrimony, so it is. They'll never have a Spanish mass, right?
No.
A Tagalog mass, or anything like that. Although they do have, um, they have a a good level of what we probably call enculturation, right? Maybe like a local. They have kind of like their local enculturation.
What do you mean?
Um,
Like, do they have Our Lady of Guadalupe?
yeah, they do Guadalupe, and they also have.
Guadalupe?
Yeah, they also have the relics of Blessed Miguel Pro.
Yeah, which is really cool.
So that's, and I think
So one of the downsides, if you will, it's not really a downside. I hate to call it that, but just trying to be, look at both sides of the coin here. Some people are put off by the ordinariate because at the end of the day, it was created for the former Anglicans to join the church. As a result, you do have some of the Anglican traditions, aka English traditions, that have come over into the ordinariate, and that's the purpose, right? I mean, it was creating a safe harbor for former Anglicans to come and be able to express their faith by keeping the riches of the Anglican tradition, but in the Catholic Church. Okay. Some people are put off by that. Some people say, well, that's kind of Protestant or whatever. So looking at both sides of the coin, you do have some Anglican, traditions. For example, one of the things that comes to mind right away, their liturgy of the hours are different. They don't practice either the extraordinary form version or the Novus Ordo liturgy of the hours. They have their very own that developed over time, specifically after the Reformation. Now, do they have elements of both? They do, but ultimately it is unique and separate. And so it can be a little bit jarring for me, a Roman Rite Mexican Catholic to come into the, the English person ordinary of the Chair of St. Peter. And at first it was a bit jarring because there is some difference and there is some very English things that are there. And that's not going to change. That's baked into the cake on purpose. Now, for me, over time, I've learned to love it. I've learned to appreciate it all. But I know I have friends who have visited and they just walk away feeling like it's just too different. It's just too different for them and
well, I
not
mean, if the
Roman
church is
enough.
gonna, yeah, and if the church is gonna allow enculturation, then why not my culture, right? So that's another.
Yes. Right. Why not the Mexican ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter?
Well, what we need to do is leave and then, before the end of our lives say, hey, we want to come back, but we want to do it
Right.
our way.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say though, to that point, and maybe, I mean, you're right. It's a very good point. Like, why an English ordinariate? Are you gonna, like, or even why an Anglican ordinariate? Are you gonna have eventually a Lutheran ordinariate and a Methodist ordinariate, and like on and on, a Pentecostal ordinariate? You know what I mean? Like, where does it end? This, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. However, the other side is the English patrimony is pretty unique in the church's history. I do think that England does have like this, they were stellar in the Middle Ages and beyond in living the Catholic faith, I think in a very special way. And I also think that in some really important ways, the Anglicans did a better job of preserving Catholic traditions than Catholics.
Well, I mean, would you say as of recent or over the centuries?
Over centuries. I mean, I'm talking about, just give you an architectural example. So before the Reformation, churches had a chancel, which is where the priest and choir, as well as if you had religious, that's where they would sit. And then beyond that was the sanctuary, which is where the altar is, and where the mass takes place. That was how Catholic churches were built throughout Europe. There was always a chancel and then a separate sanctuary. What that meant is the altar tended to be further back. But what they did is they would build it up on steps, and it would create this really dramatic and beautiful effect of having the choir full of religious. And as the people are sitting in the pews, they're looking through that to the altar where the priest is celebrating the Mass. Beautiful, right? Well, in the Reformation, as a response to Protestants complaining about not being able to see what was happening, they took the chancel and the sanctuary and they just smushed it together. And so then you ended up with a mixture, to the point that churches were now just built as sanctuaries and not really having a chancel in the front. So that's how things developed. Well, the English didn't stop doing chancels. They kept going with them. Not only that, rood screens. I mean, you know that in the parish here in Houston, there's a rood screen, right? Well, that was in every Catholic parish in the Middle Ages, or at least a lot of them. Well, Reformation time, as a response to the Protestants, ripped them all out of the churches so that you could see. Well, the English didn't stop doing rood screens. And so that's just one example of how the English, in some ways, preserved medieval Catholic tradition better than Catholics. I mean, and again, you can have a debate as to whether that it was a good thing to rip on rood screens or not. But there's something beautiful about the fact that they held on to it. And there's something beautiful about the fact that they're making their way back into the church through the ordinariate. I think that's really cool.
No, it is cool, especially, I mean, and this is kind of the beauty of these returned family members. Yeah. They're gonna, it's like the structure of St. Thomas Aquinas, the Summa Theologiae. Like the structure is you start with God, and then we moved away, and then come back full circle back to God.
That's cool. Yeah.
And something comes with us as we come back. Our scars, and things that we've learned. And so with the ordinariate, I tease them, just because no one's safe on Dos Vaticanos.
No, man.
So we all make fun of ourselves. Nobody's high and mighty. We're all,
yes,
we're all trying to find our way to God. So,
and we're trying to look at it just objectively, and I'm trying to share the kind of, what do you call it? The drawbacks that some people see about the ordinary.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, with that, let's go over to option 3. Option 4, join an Eastern Catholic parish.
Nah.
All right. And that's it.
I don't
Uh,
know, man. What do you think? This is the Matt Fradd option, right?
yeah, the Byzantine Catholic option, which they're available. What is what will
I just gave him an idea for a book. If he makes one, he's got to pay me.
yeah, the Eastern Catholic option
No, it's going to be called the Matt Fradd option, where he talks about going to an Eastern Catholic parish. You're welcome, Matt Fradd.
written by Matt Fradd. Yes. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if he takes it and runs with it. Um, he's got a lot of good options, but
But
yeah, no one is safe. No one. So Eastern Catholic, so Eastern Orthodox. Well, what do we mean by that? We mean the other lung of the church, so to speak, and maybe like the
yeah.
trachea is like the ordinariate,
Have you ever been to
FSSP.
an Eastern Catholic parish?
I have.
I have not. So can you tell
Uh,
me, like,
there's
what do
one.
you
There's
think?
one actually near us. Our Lady of the Cedars. Well,
Okay.
that's actually Syriac rite, I think. Actually, we're
Well, that's
recording.
Eastern, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
that way,
it's over. It's east of England.
that way,
So I have one thing to note is that they sing everything.
right?
Um,
Do they have
in
pews?
they do.
Okay.
Others do not. But the the early church monks resemble a lot of the um, Eastern way of doing the liturgy. So when you think of like the Desert Fathers, and you think of some of like the Greeks, the Greek Church Fathers, this is their patrimony, so to speak. So there's not a
Yeah.
lot. There's not a lot of Eastern Catholic churches here. They typically just serve people who are from those countries today.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I don't know,
um,
man. I Here's my hot take. My hot take would be stick with the right you were born in.
stay in your right lane.
Stay in your right. Know your rights. Um, yeah, I just think, because like even us going to the ordinary, like people could accuse us of bailing. It's still part of the Roman rite. It's still part of the Roman rite. And I think that's the big difference. We are still within the tradition of our forefathers. And again, the deeper I get into the ordinariate, the more I realize that the traditions they preserved are really just Catholic traditions. And not only that, like they're more ancient traditions than ones that
We see today.
the rest of the Catholic Church practices. With the Eastern Rite, I mean, they have their own unique tradition, right? And it's all about tradition, man. Like they have their own unique tradition that is completely connected in a beautiful way with culture, with the culture of these countries, these various Eastern countries and Middle Eastern countries. And I think that that is really, really well integrated. It doesn't mean we shouldn't visit them. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be familiar with them. It doesn't mean we shouldn't engage them. But man, the Roman Rite needs all the help it can get right now. Like all the help it can get. And I think that having Catholics just flee to the Eastern Church, to me, seems just short-sighted. It seems like you're not, it's almost like, you've heard of, not brain dump. What's it called? When like really smart people leave countries, like poor countries? Brain
Drain.
drain. That's it. Brain drain. It's like that in the Catholic Church, right? When you have people leaving the rite where they were born and going to Eastern churches, to me, I can almost see it like brain drain. Like you're taking these great, amazing people. And yes, I understand. I mean, there's a reason why I'm at the ordinariate. You want your children to grow up in a good parish. Maybe that's the only one that they have access to. There's no FSSP. There's no ordinariate parish. This is all they got. In that case, I understand. But it seems like you should stay and fight. And again, if you accuse me of bailing by going to an ordinariate, I will remind you that they're Roman Rite. And I will
You're still a
remind you,
quitter. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
hey man,
I'm
come
there
on.
too, man. I'm there. I
No,
see
and
that.
here's the thing. I have not given up on the diocese. I still
Yeah.
participate in the diocese. I'm active. I do have to provide safe harbor for my children to grow up in. But at the end of the day, I am part of the Roman Rite. And the ordinariate is an integral part of the Roman Rite. And so that's the big difference. It's all about tradition and preserving and handing on the tradition that was handed to us. And I feel like if you were born in the Roman Rite, the tradition that is handed to you is the one that you need to uphold and pass on to the next generation. Now, if you married into it, or if you had no other option, I understand. But I do think that the Roman Rite is worth fighting for. And right now, it needs all the help it can get.
Okay, so let's define that then, right? So we talked about leaving the influence of bad bishops. You're in a archdiocese and it needs help. You're going to find safe harbor, but then you're going to leave your kids at the Jedi temple so they're safe, but now you need to go out to this you need to go out and Tatooine and start like saving some of these little villages, right? So what are we going to do? What can we do? I'll answer the question myself first.
Yeah, please.
I think we need to have in the archdiocese, we really need to ask for them for reverence in the ordinary form. I think if we can get reverence back, which seems more likely than having the traditional Latin Mass side by side, I'm just looking for low hanging fruit. I would love for them to have the traditional Latin Mass side by side with the ordinary form for a century. And then if we have that kind of melding together, I think future generations will maybe not solve the problem, but they will see that there's a converging of these two, especially given the history of the ordinary form, which is very questionable, and we all have to admit that. um, so asking for reverence, asking for ad orientem, restoring some of these things that even the ordinariate does, it would make the liturgy of the ordinary form look very similar to the extraordinary form. But I don't think that's enough. I think we have to ask for that, but we also have to look at Gregorian chant, which we've talked about in the past. And so, that's the way I would answer that question. Yeah, I think we need to have both liturgies in the ordinary form, extraordinary form in the archdiocese look very, very similar.
Yeah, I mean, that would be amazing. That would be really nice. I would differ in that, and I know this is a hot take.
We're getting used to these hot takes.
This is a hot take. I'm not sure they're saving the Novus Ordo. That's a hot take. I just think it's flawed from its conception.
Who's going to defend the Novus Ordo as it is, right?
I mean, so there was I'm not going to remember who it was, a famous French philosopher person who wrote, I'll have to look this up and maybe we can circle back someday.
Jacques Maritain?
No, it wasn't Jacques Maritain.
Etienne Gilson? No.
He wrote, just start listing all the French.
Just start saying a bunch of French names.
Yeah. Anyways, writes that if the extraordinary, this was written back when the extraordinary form was the only thing around. Actually, I think it might have been during the French Revolution when it was being talked about how they were going to abolish the Mass, And he says that Generation Sense would discover the old Mass, like they would come upon old missals and look at this thing, and they will fall in love with how beautiful this was. They will reenact it to try to see how this beautiful thing was, and people will come to it, and they will just see the beauty of the Mass, and they will clamor for it to come back. I don't ever see that happening with the Novus Ordo. People will find.
Remember the music that we once had.
You
Look at
know,
these
people will
ancient
find
instruments. This was a
the
guitar.
yeah,
Look at
people
they
will
used to
find
use this.
the typical missile that is used and be like, I'm good. You know what I mean? Like the old mass is such a sublime work of art that it is worth preserving, whereas the Novus Ordo, it's okay.
Collector's edition, you know.
And again, I don't want to sound like I don't believe the new mass is valid. It is a valid mass, okay? It's a valid mass. What I'm getting at is, what are we going to
But
do with our precious resources? We have limited time, we have limited ability to make things happen. What am I going to be spending my time on? I'm going to be spending my time on trying to help us return to a mass that we know fed saints and holy people for centuries. And that will be the marker for whatever's going to happen with the Novus Ordo. I'm not even saying that the Novus Ordo should go away. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, though, that we should focus on rediscovering the extraordinary form, and then what is going to happen with the Novus Ordo will happen. That's like some future generation's job to figure out, not mine. I feel like our generation, their task is to rediscover the authentic tradition of the church, to feed whatever else is going to happen in liturgy. And again, maybe I'm wrong. I'll be proven wrong. The Novus Ordo will survive. It will be changed. It will be revived, and it'll be great. But just for my limited life that I have, I think that's where I'm going to spend it.
yeah, I think that's a good way to spin it, is that we don't have centuries to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean we don't. And right now, honestly, like if you ask me, like what should we do with the Novus Ordo? I mean, sure, make it more traditional. That would help. But
The
it's
likelihood that it's going to happen though, in with again we're talking about influence of bishops. It's not going to happen anytime soon. It's way
yeah,
too political, and I believe it's because of money.
yeah,
That the Protestant model is notorious for generating these mega churches and bringing in
hmm
a lot of money, um, because it's it's giving the customer what they want,
yeah,
not what they need.
yeah. No, and I think again, you know, I don't know. I just feel like there's a limited amount of time, and the Novus Ordo comes with so many potential tripwires
It's
that
the options.
I'm saying leave it alone. Leave it, like don't touch it. Like people can keep doing it the way they're doing it. I don't want to prohibit anything. Continue. However, alongside it, in the parishes that are open to it, I'm not mandating anything. In the parishes that are open to it, celebrate the extraordinary form. Have it be a wellspring of inspiration for whatever else is going to happen. For parishes that want to continue to do the Novus Ordo, go for it. I'm not here to tell you you shouldn't do it. I'm just telling you that the way I see things, what we need right now is to return to a solid foundation liturgically. That thankfully Pope Benedict provided through Summorum Pontificum. Let's just take advantage of that. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, well,
Now everyone thinks I'm a sedevacantist, but whatever. I'm not.
yeah, well, you know what?
I
There's
don't
a
even go to a Latin Mass parish.
we want some more in Pontificum and Latin masses and all the other parishes that we don't go to.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
why? Because we're thinking the whole church. There
Yeah,
is a big middle that I hope we can reach.
yeah,
There's and because of the effects of social media, we think that everyone's on an extreme camp.
right.
There's a giant middle, in the normalization curve, right? There's a giant middle of Catholics right now, and we're in the middle perceiving everyone else to be on the extremes. It's like that
Right.
normalization curve is inverted, and you have like a bunch of people in the extremes and very few people in the middle. I think that's further from the truth than I think that's very far from the truth.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I mean, there's a lot of hopeful signs in the church. And again, I don't want to make it sound like I'm a crazy person. Maybe I am, but I just feel like
Stop defending yourself. Just say it, Raf.
we don't need, we don't even have the information we need to fix the Novus Ordo. I guess that's what I'm getting at. Like, we don't have the headspace to even know what to do with the Novus Ordo at this moment, which is why I feel like for our generation, the goal is a return to solid tradition. Then future generations will have to ponder the question of what to do next. But our goal is just return to the solid rock, you know,
Yeah, and
to the strata there.
maybe what we're also saying, and I'm saying this, I'm saying that the resources we need to answer the call of the church to of the musica sacra, tra le sollecitudini, all these reference documents that most people don't have time to read. These reference documents are asking for us to celebrate the liturgy with Gregorian chant. So why am I bringing this up in this part of the conversation? Is because I don't think the trads are doing the mass right. The traditionalists aren't doing the liturgy the
Yeah,
way it
no,
was meant to be,
there
and neither
is, yes.
we're not doing any liturgy the way it's supposed to be. Except maybe the ordinariate who's doing the way.
That's a very good point.
And so the low mass culture, which we talked about earlier,
Yes.
so I'm just trying to put a bow tie on this.
There's room to grow on both sides.
There is, and people who've studied sacred music, not me, but others, also note this as well, that even in the ceremonies of the Roman Rite, as it stands today, is that it says that the people should be following the choir. And so if we do, like, we'd be standing from the beginning of the liturgy all the way until the epistle in the traditional Latin Mass, which is just like what we do in the Ordinariate, just like what we do in the Novus Ordo, ordinary form. So these similarities, I think we make the incorrect assumption that because the low mass is so different from the ordinary form, that's the way the traditional Latin Mass has always been. But I've been researching pictures of, and you're an architect, basilicas or large churches and cathedrals with multiple altars, when you had multiple priests living in residence, maybe a religious community, and that they all had their mass obligations as priests, their daily mass obligations. I think we've forgotten why, and if you look at the new churches, you don't have multiple altars. It's all the old churches, like the Holy Rosaries, the Annunciations. They maintain those. Because at one point in time, you'd have visiting priests, and they can go there, and
well, I mean,
that's where they did their mass.
That was the Novus Ordo Concelebration change.
Exactly.
That got rid of all these side altars, and I mean, the other reason they argue is because the altar is a sign of Christ, and so you have multiple Christ in the church. That was the we can't have multiple Christ in a church. You can just have one Christ. So, anyways, I'm not saying I buy it. That's just how they did away with all the side altars.
So, my point is that's where low mass culture started. Is when they took the priest who was doing his daily obligation, and you could attend it. You'd probably kneel to the side. You were just kneeling, waiting for communion. You didn't hear anything, which is why today,
because you weren't supposed to. It was a private affair.
Yeah, absolutely. It was missa privata. Even technically, it's called the missa privata. So they were doing the missa privata as a large church, which that's not what the low mass was intended for. Absolutely. In fact, the only reason why it's a low mass in most large parishes is because people don't know Gregorian chant.
Yeah, they don't have the infrastructure to be able to sing at every mass. No, that's a real point of growth for the extraordinary form parishes. I think there's a lot of room to grow in both directions. It's not that the folks who do the extraordinary form have everything right and the hell to everyone else. That's not what I'm saying.
So I think this is the contribution, I think, we as two Catholics who came up from colonized places, missionary countries, like we have a unique perspective. You know, we don't just kind of take things as face value. We actually have a lot of questions, which has led us to find a lot of truth, and learn a lot more. And you know, because our tradition, our even our own familial tradition and how we grew up is, even though it's grounded in the Catholic faith, like we grew up in Novus Ordo parishes, just ordinary
Absolutely.
form parishes that had a lot of weird stuff and a lot of good stuff.
Hmm. Absolutely.
and
No, I
and
mean,
ne-
yeah, I
we're
agree.
trying to graft onto a tree that's got deeper roots, a tree that's older than 60 years.
I mean, I go back to just wanting parishes to not have such massive pendulum swings. You know, just have a reasonable expectation that the parish is going to be the same. You know, that it's not going to, oh wait, let's see what we get in the priest lottery. You know, and that's not to say that there's a lot of good priests. There's a lot of good priests out there. Okay, I mean, I dare say it's a minority that priests come in and wreck things, but it happens more than you think.
Yeah. So this is good. Let's
I like it.
we'll cut this up into a couple of episodes. Like the way you ended just right there. Yeah. I think the way you ended right there, we should just cut it there
All right.
and just like make it kind of a, because like we're gonna take this to two different episodes, I think.
Yeah. Are you
Since
still
we Yeah, I am. Yeah, let me just stop.
Oh,